The sun had just begun to dip behind the horizon, casting an orange glow over the quiet town of Rockford. But it wasn't going to be a peaceful night. The roar of motorcycle engines sliced through the calm, loud, and threatening. A group of bikers, wearing leather jackets with patches of their gang's insignia, zoomed down the main street, their laughter echoing in the air. They were out to have some fun, to bully, to cause trouble. They spotted him before he even had a chance to react. Santa Claus. Yes, that's Santa. Dressed in his full red suit, white beard and black boots, standing in front of the town square's Christmas tree. He was holding a sign that read, "Merry Christmas from Rockford," as he waved at the few families walking by. It wasn't your usual Santa Claus, though. This one was different. This Santa was black. As the bikers slowed down, one of them, Jake, a tall man with a thick beard and tattoos covering both arms, gave a mocking chuckle. "Hey, Santa, what's with the get-up?" he shouted, revving his engine louder. The others joined in, laughing and pointing. "You're a little too dark for Santa, don't you think?" Another biker jeered. Santa's smile faltered for a moment, but he kept waving at the families, his calm demeanor only angering the bikers more. They hadn't recognized him yet. They didn't know who he was, but they were about to find out the hard way. Jake jumped off his bike and swaggered over to Santa, a smirk still plastered on his face. "What's a guy like you doing playing Santa in this town?" he sneered, stepping into Santa's personal space. "You don't belong here." Santa stood his ground, his hands resting on his waist. "I'm just here to spread some holiday cheer," he said softly, his voice carrying a quiet authority that caught Jake off guard. "Oh, we're gonna spread some cheer, all right," Jake said, motioning to his friends. "Let's show Santa what a real Christmas is like." The bikers chuckled menacingly, ready to turn the situation into something uglier. But then, just as things were about to escalate, a car screeched to a stop nearby. The door flew open and a man in a sharp suit stepped out, his face furious. "Hey!" the man shouted, his voice carrying across the street. "Leave him alone, you idiots." The bikers paused, confused. "What's your problem, man?" one of them asked, turning to face the newcomer. The man didn't flinch. His eyes narrowed. "I'm the problem," he said coldly. "You don't know who you're messing with." He turned to Santa, his face softening just a little. "You all right, Sam?" Santa nodded and Jake's eyes widened. "Sam?" he repeated, confused. The man in the suit stepped forward, standing tall and unafraid. "Yeah, Sam Carter, mayor of Rockford." The bikers froze. The air felt charged, as if the whole town was holding its breath. Sam Carter, the Black Santa, was the mayor? They had no idea. No one had warned them they were about to mess with the man who ran the town. The realization hit them like a truck. For a brief moment, everything was still. The bikers exchanged nervous glances, and then, just as quickly, everything exploded. "Wait a second," Jake growled. "You're the mayor. You're the one who's been running this town into the ground. The whole place is falling apart because of guys like you." He pointed a finger towards Sam, his voice dripping with disdain. Sam stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "You can leave right now, or I can make sure you never ride through here again." The bikers didn't move. They didn't back down. The tension thickened, but before anyone could act, a loud noise shattered the moment. Sirens. A squad car, its lights flashing red and blue, pulled up to the scene, and 2 officers got out. "Everything okay here, Mayor?" one of them asked, noticing the tension. Sam nodded slowly. "These men were just leaving," he said firmly. Jake and his gang exchanged uncertain looks. Their bravado was wearing thin, but they weren't the type to back down easily. They muttered curses under their breath, grumbling about how they didn't take orders from anyone, especially not some Black Santa. But they didn't argue. One by one, they climbed back onto their bikes, firing up their engines. Without another word, they revved their motorcycles and took off, disappearing down the street. As the dust settled, Sam turned to the officers. "Thanks," he said. "You know how they are." The officer nodded. "Anytime, Mayor." Sam glanced back at the Christmas tree. where families had gathered once again, some looking uneasy after the commotion. But as they caught sight of the mayor standing there, calm and composed, they seemed to relax. Christmas in Rockford wasn't supposed to be about violence or hate. It was supposed to be about community, family, and unity. But things were about to take a darker turn. The bikers had left, but they weren't finished with Rockford. No, they had made a decision that night. A decision that would change everything. As Sam stood by the Christmas tree, the last of the bikers disappeared into the night, and he knew that something bigger was coming. Something worse. He had no idea just how soon it would come, and he had no idea how far it would go. It had been a peaceful day before all of that. Sam Carter had always enjoyed Rockford's charm. A small town with a big heart, where the people knew each other by name and greeted one another with warm smiles. It wasn't perfect. No place ever was, but it was home. Sam had lived in Rockford his whole life. He had grown up here, worked hard, and eventually been elected mayor. He was the town's first black mayor. And while it had been a tough journey, he was proud of what he'd accomplished. He knew the town needed change, and he was determined to make sure that it happened. When he had first taken on the role of Santa, it was meant to be a fun way to bring joy to the kids and families during the holidays. People loved seeing him in that big red suit, the white beard, the twinkling eyes. He had always been the one to step into the role every year, no matter how busy or stressful his life got. It was his way of giving back to the community, of showing the people of Rockford that he cared. But today had been different. The bikers had made it clear they didn't like him, didn't like the town's progress, and didn't like what Rockford was becoming. There was something ugly brewing beneath the surface of the town, a sickness of hate and fear that had taken root. Sam wasn't naive. He knew the town had its problems. There were those who felt threatened by the changes happening in their town, by the idea of a black man in charge, by the thought of a more inclusive, progressive community. Sam had seen the graffiti, heard the whispers, but until today he had managed to stay focused, to stay positive. Now, though, as he stood by the Christmas tree, he felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He could feel it. Something big was coming. He didn't know what it was, but he knew it wasn't going to be easy to handle. The bikers hadn't just targeted him because he was black. They had targeted him because of what he represented, and that scared Sam more than anything else. The evening sky grew darker as the last of the Christmas lights twinkled in the distance. Sam looked out over the town he loved. But this Christmas, Rockford wasn't going to be the same. Something was brewing in the shadows, something darker. And Sam Carter was about to find himself at the center of it all. What he didn't know was that the bikers' attack was just the beginning. The worst was yet to come. The night had settled over Rockford and everything seemed to return to normal. The bikers were gone, and the Christmas lights still twinkled on the square. Children were bundled in coats, playing in the snow, while parents sipped hot chocolate, laughing and talking. But Sam Carter, the mayor, couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He stood alone in the square for a few moments, looking at the tree with its bright red and green lights, thinking about the incident with the bikers. The whole thing had shaken him. He'd dealt with opposition before, racial tension, people angry about the town's progress, people who didn't like the changes he pushed for. But this was different. It wasn't just a disagreement. It was a clear, ugly hate that had been directed squarely at him. Sam took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. He couldn't let fear control him. He was the mayor of Rockford. He had to be strong, especially now. This town depended on him. But just as he was about to leave the square and head back to his office, his phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a text message. The message was short, but it sent a chill through Sam's bones. "We know where you live. Stay out of our town or else." His heart sank. The bikers had been serious, and this wasn't some random threat. This was personal. Sam stared at the phone for a moment. The text was unsigned, but it was clear who it was from. The same bikers who had harassed him earlier. They weren't just going to let this slide. They'd made it known they didn't want him in charge. And now they were threatening him in the most direct way possible. Sam could feel the weight of their threat, the promise of something darker, something violent if he didn't back down. His hands tightened around the phone as he shoved it back into his jacket pocket. He wasn't going to run. He wasn't going to let them push him out of his town. But the message was clear. They weren't done with him. As Sam walked away from the square, he saw a figure standing near the coffee shop at the corner of Main Street. It was Marcus, his longtime friend and the town's police chief. Marcus was looking in Sam's direction, and as soon as he saw the mayor, he waved him over. "Sam," Marcus called, his face concerned. Sam walked up to him. "What's going on?" he asked, keeping his voice low, though he could feel the nerves creeping up on him. He didn't want anyone in the town to see him worried. "I heard about what happened with the bikers," Marcus said, his voice just as serious. "I'm not gonna lie to you, Sam. I've been hearing some things. Some talk around town. People are scared. They think this is just the beginning." "Talk?" Sam asked. "What kind of talk?" Marcus glanced around before leaning in closer. "People are saying these bikers, this gang, have been running wild for a while now. They've been trying to intimidate businesses, spreading their hate, doing what they can to undermine the progress you've made here. And now they're targeting you. They think if they get rid of you, they'll put Rockford back in their hands." Sam felt a cold knot twist in his stomach. He had heard the rumors, the whispers of discontent, but he didn't realize just how deep it ran. The bikers weren't just a few troublemakers, they were a force, and they had made Rockford their battleground. "What can we do about it?" Sam asked, his voice firm. "I'm not backing down. I'm staying right here." "I know you're not, and neither am I," Marcus said, his expression hardening. "But we can't ignore this. The police department isn't enough to deal with this kind of threat alone. We need help, Sam. And I think it's time we start looking into who's really behind this gang. We need to get ahead of them before they start making moves." Sam nodded, thinking about the bikers' words, the way they had mocked him. This wasn't just personal. It was about something bigger. They didn't just want to scare him. They wanted to destroy everything he had worked for. And they were willing to go to extreme lengths to do it. "I'll gather the town council tomorrow," Sam said, determined. "We need a plan. We need to show them that Rockford won't bend to their hate." Marcus nodded. "Good. But be careful, Sam. These guys, they don't play by the rules. They'll do anything to get what they want." Sam turned to walk away, but paused as Marcus called out to him one more time. "And don't think they're just going to stop with you. This town means something to them, and they'll stop at nothing to take it back." Sam nodded, but deep down he feared Marcus was right. The next morning, the town hall meeting was packed. People crowded into the small meeting room, their faces filled with worry and uncertainty. Rockford had always been a quiet, peaceful place, but the night before had shattered that peace. The attack on Santa, on their mayor, was a wake-up call. It was a sign that the town wasn't as safe as it once was. Sam stood at the front of the room, facing the council members and the people who had gathered to discuss what had happened. He could feel the weight of the room's gaze on him. Everyone was looking to him for answers, for reassurance that everything was going to be okay. "I know everyone's scared," Sam began, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "But I'm not going anywhere. We can't let these bikers take over our town. We've come too far and we fought too hard to let them destroy what we've built." The crowd murmured in agreement, but the tension was palpable. People were scared, and for good reason. The bikers had made it clear they were willing to go to extreme lengths to make their point. "We're going to fight back," Sam continued. "But we're going to do it smart. I've spoken with Chief Marcus, and we're looking into every lead we can. We'll start by figuring out who's funding these bikers and who's behind the operation. We'll build a plan and we'll protect our town." A woman in the back of the room stood up. "But Sam, what if they don't listen? What if they come after you again? What if they bring more people?" "I'll take care of myself," Sam said, looking her in the eye. "We'll take every precaution. We'll make sure the police are on alert, and we'll keep the town safe. But we have to stay united. If we stand together, they can't tear us apart." As the meeting went on, Sam's mind raced. He knew the bikers wouldn't give up. They had a plan. They were going to strike again, and Sam had no idea when or where it would happen. But one thing was clear. The fight for Rockford's future had only just begun. And it wasn't just about Santa anymore. The bikers weren't just targeting him. They were targeting the heart of Rockford itself. The following days felt like a ticking time bomb. Every corner of Rockford seemed to buzz with whispers. Every street felt just a little too quiet, as if everyone was waiting for something bad to happen. Sam couldn't escape the feeling that danger was closer than he'd ever imagined. Despite the looming threat, he tried to keep up appearances. He spent his days in his office, poring over the town's budget proposals, meeting with local businesses to reassure them, and staying in touch with Marcus and the police department. But his mind was always on the bikers, on what they might do next. The text message had unsettled him more than he cared to admit. Stay out of our town or else. What did they mean by that? What were they capable of? He couldn't afford to sit idly by, not when the town he loved was at risk. Sam had already made up his mind. He wasn't going to be intimidated. He was going to fight back. But it wasn't until Thursday night that things really began to spiral out of control. The night had started out peaceful enough. The streets of Rockford were quiet, the stars overhead twinkling in the clear sky. Sam was in his office, reviewing a list of upcoming town events, when his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and saw Marcus's name flash across the screen. The text message was short, but the words hit him hard. Get to Main Street. It's happening. Sam's stomach dropped. He didn't need to ask what it was. The bikers were making their move. He rushed out of his office and headed straight for the street. The cold winter air bit at his skin and the town felt eerily empty as he made his way down the sidewalk. The streetlights flickered as he passed, the dim glow casting long shadows. As he neared Main Street, he could hear the unmistakable sound of motorcycle engines revving in the distance. He picked up his pace, his heart pounding in his chest. The bikers were here, and they weren't planning on leaving without causing chaos. When Sam rounded the corner onto Main Street, he saw the bikers for the first time in full force. Dozens of motorcycles lined the street, their engines rumbling menacingly. The gang's leader, Jake, stood at the head of the pack, his eyes scanning the area. The rest of the bikers were spread out, some leaning against their bikes, others pacing, their movements sharp and predatory. The moment Jake saw Sam, a twisted grin spread across his face. Well, if it isn't Mayor Santa, he sneered. You think you can stop us? Sam didn't flinch. He stepped forward, his voice steady but full of authority. This town doesn't belong to you, Jake. You don't get to intimidate us. You don't get to control us. You don't own Rockford. Jake's grin faltered, but he quickly recovered. I don't have to own it. I just have to tear it down. And you're standing in my way. Sam could see the other bikers shifting around, preparing for something. He could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. You don't know what you're messing with, Sam said, his voice cold. I'm not going to let you destroy this town. I'll fight for it with everything I have. Jake laughed, a dark and hollow sound. You don't get it, do you? It's not about you. It's not about Rockford. It's about power. And I'm the one who's going to take it. Before Sam could respond, there was a loud crash from behind him. He spun around just in time to see a group of bikers speeding toward the town square, knocking over light posts and pushing over street signs as they rode by. It was a calculated show of force, a warning. But the real blow came next. A loud explosion echoed through the street. The ground trembled beneath Sam's feet as smoke erupted from the back of the town hall building, a flash of light lighting up the sky. The bikers didn't even flinch. They stood, watching as the flames started to lick at the side of the building, sending plumes of smoke into the air. The fire had been set. Sam's blood ran cold. The bikers weren't just threatening him. They were targeting the heart of the town. The town hall was the center of Rockford's government, the symbol of everything Sam had worked for. No, Sam shouted, rushing toward the building, his mind racing. He could hear the crackling of the fire as it began to spread, the heat pushing him back. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. Call the fire department. Sam yelled at one of the bystanders, but he knew it would be too late. The fire was already out of control. The flames had caught too quickly. The building was going to burn. Behind him, Jake and the other bikers watched with smug satisfaction. "You'll never stop us, Mayor," Jake called after him, his voice laced with venom. "This town is ours now." Sam's heart raced as he reached the edge of the fire, feeling the heat on his skin. He had to do something. He couldn't just stand there and watch it burn. But as he reached for his phone to call for help, he heard the unmistakable sound of approaching sirens. The fire department arrived just in time. But even as the firefighters rushed to douse the flames, Sam knew that the bikers had just crossed a line. They had gone too far, and they weren't going to stop until they had broken him, and Rockford, completely. As the firefighters worked tirelessly to put out the blaze, Sam stood in the shadows, his fists clenched in frustration. The bikers had made their point. They weren't just after him, they were after the entire town. And Sam realized something that chilled him to the bone. This was only the beginning. The aftermath of the fire was devastating. By the time the firefighters had managed to bring the flames under control, the town hall had suffered severe damage. The upper floors were completely gutted, and the roof had collapsed in several places. The fire had burned so hot that even the metal frames of the building had been warped. Rockford was shaken to its core. Sam stood in front of the building the next morning, his gaze fixed on the charred remains of what had once been the center of town government. The smoke still hung in the air, and the scent of burnt wood and metal clung to everything. The sight of the town hall in ruins was a blow Sam wasn't prepared for. It was more than just a building. It was a symbol of everything the people of Rockford had fought for: progress, unity, a future where everyone was welcome. And now it was gone. "Mayor?" Marcus's voice interrupted his thoughts. Sam turned to see his friend walking toward him, his face grim. "They're not done, are they?" Marcus asked, his tone heavy with concern. Sam shook his head. "No, this is just the beginning." The bikers had made their statement. They weren't just going to terrorize Sam. They were going to tear down everything he had worked for. And it wasn't just the mayor's office they wanted to destroy. It was Rockford itself. The fire had left more than just physical scars on Rockford. The destruction of the town hall had sent shockwaves through the community, and now the streets felt different. People no longer walked with the same carefree attitude. There was a noticeable unease in the air. The town was divided, with some rallying behind Sam, while others whispered doubts and fears that perhaps the bikers had a point. Maybe Rockford had changed too much too fast. Sam could feel the weight of it all pressing down on him. The town had always been his home, and to see it teetering on the edge of chaos made him feel powerless. He spent every waking moment trying to pick up the pieces to hold things together. But the more he tried, the more it felt like the cracks were widening, that the foundation of Rockford was slipping through his fingers. The morning after the fire, Sam met with his council at the temporary location they had set up, a small community center a few blocks away. The room was filled with familiar faces, but there was a tension in the air, an unspoken concern that everyone was trying to hide. No one spoke at first, but the silence was thick, as if everyone was waiting for Sam to break it. Finally, Marcus spoke up, breaking the heavy quiet. "We need to get ahead of this, Sam. The bikers made it clear they're not just attacking you, they're going after everything you've worked for. If we don't act fast, we could lose control of this town." Sam nodded slowly. "I know, but what can we do? The police can't stop them if they're willing to go this far. The bikers have nothing to lose. They've already shown they'll burn down our homes if it means making their point." One of the town council members, a woman named Laura, leaned forward. "We can't just sit here and wait for them to destroy everything. We need to show the town that we're still united. We need to rebuild, and we need to do it quickly." Sam glanced around the room, his mind racing. "Rebuild? We don't even have the resources for that. The town hall is just the beginning. The bikers are only going to escalate things. I don't know if we have the strength to hold them off." "We have to try," Marcus said firmly. You can't fight this alone, Sam. We need the support of the people, and they need to see that you're not backing down. Sam hesitated, his eyes lingering on the empty chairs in the back of the room. Not everyone in town supported him. He could feel it. There were murmurs of dissent, voices that questioned his leadership. The bikers had planted a seed of fear, and it was growing fast. If they didn't act soon, they could lose everything. What about security? Laura asked. We need to protect the businesses, the people. We need a plan that doesn't just rely on the police. We can't risk waiting for backup if things get worse. Marcus's brow furrowed. We've been working on that. We'll increase patrols, set up neighborhood watch groups. But we also need to talk to the state police. Maybe even the National Guard if it gets to that point. This could get bigger than we can handle ourselves. We don't have time for that, Sam said, running a hand through his hair. We need something to show the town we're in control. If we don't act fast, they'll see us as weak, and they'll take advantage of it. I can start reaching out to local businesses, Laura suggested. We can start a fundraising campaign, raise money for repairs, and let the town know that we're in this together. I'll handle the media, Marcus added. I'll make sure the town knows that we're on top of things. We can't let the bikers control the narrative. The room went quiet again as everyone took in the weight of what they were saying. They knew that rebuilding the town was more than just physical repairs. It was about restoring the people's faith. They had to prove that they were strong, united, and capable of standing up to the threat that loomed over them. Sam looked around the table, his eyes meeting the faces of the council members, the faces of the people he had worked with for so long. They were with him. They weren't backing down. We'll do this together, Sam said finally, his voice filled with conviction. We'll rebuild, but we'll also make it clear that Rockford isn't going to be intimidated. We will fight back, and we'll do it the right way. The next few days were a whirlwind of meetings, planning, and outreach. Sam worked tirelessly to put together a strategy that would not only restore the town, but send a clear message to the bikers and anyone else who might want to threaten Rockford's future. The town's businesses rallied behind him, offering donations and support. The community came together in a way that Sam hadn't seen in years. The damage to the town hall was devastating, but the people's resolve was stronger than ever. It was clear that the bikers had underestimated the spirit of Rockford. But despite the surge of support, Sam couldn't shake the feeling that they were just delaying the inevitable. The bikers weren't done. If anything, they had just started, and he knew that the next attack would come soon. He could feel it in his bones. That night, as he was leaving the community center after another long day of planning, Sam's phone buzzed again. He pulled it out of his pocket, his heart skipping a beat when he saw the familiar number, Marcus. The text read, "They're here. Main Street. Now." His blood ran cold. Sam rushed to his car, his mind racing. He knew what this meant. The bikers were back, and they were targeting Main Street. They weren't just causing trouble. They were making a statement. They were going to hit the heart of Rockford once again. When Sam arrived, the scene was chaotic. Police cars lined the street, their lights flashing. People were gathering in small groups, their faces a mixture of fear and confusion. And in the distance, Sam could see the unmistakable sight of motorcycles, dozens of them. Jake and his gang were back, but this time they weren't here to intimidate. They were here to destroy. As Sam approached the crowd, he saw something that made his stomach turn. The bikers had surrounded the local diner, a beloved spot on Main Street, and they weren't just standing there. They were smashing windows, tipping over tables, throwing objects into the street. The diner's owner, Tony, stood helpless in front of the chaos, his face pale and wide-eyed with terror. Sam's heart clenched. This was more than just a personal attack. This was an assault on everything the town stood for. "Tony," Sam shouted, pushing his way through the crowd. "Get back inside. It's not safe." Tony looked at him, his eyes filled with fear. "They won't stop, Sam. They said this was just the beginning." Sam's stomach twisted as he realized the truth of Tony's words. The bikers had gone beyond making threats. They were escalating their violence, and they were making sure everyone knew it. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about Rockford, and they were willing to burn it to the ground. Before Sam could act, Jake stepped into view, flanked by several other bikers. He was grinning, his eyes gleaming with malice. "We warned you, Mayor," Jake said, his voice mocking. "Rockford is ours now, and there's nothing you can do to stop it." Sam's hands balled into fists, his heart pounding with fury. "You're wrong," he said, his voice steady despite the anger rising in him. "This town belongs to the people, not you. Not your gang, not anyone." Jake's grin widened. "We'll see about that." And with that, the bikers began their rampage, knocking over more tables, throwing chairs, and shattering glass. Sam could feel the eyes of the townspeople on him, could feel the fear spreading. The bikers were making their move, and this time, they weren't stopping until they had taken everything. Sam didn't know how much longer Rockford could hold on. The sound of glass shattering echoed through the streets as the bikers continued their rampage, tearing through the local diner like a storm. Sam stood frozen for a moment, his mind racing. Every part of him screamed to act, to stop them before it went too far. But he had no backup. The police were scattered, trying to keep the crowd under control and prevent the bikers from spreading further chaos. It was clear that they were outnumbered. "Get inside, Tony. Now," Sam shouted over the commotion. Tony hesitated, looking at the destruction around him, his face a picture of helplessness. "They're gonna burn this whole town down, Sam. They're not gonna stop until they've taken everything." Sam's chest tightened. He knew Tony was right. The bikers weren't just after him anymore. They were after the town. And Rockford, for all its beauty and charm, was vulnerable. Small towns like this weren't built to withstand this kind of violence. He had never imagined that his fight to protect Rockford would come to this. Without another word, Tony bolted inside the diner, and Sam turned to face the bikers. The rage that had been building inside him, simmering since the first attack, finally boiled over. He couldn't stand by and watch the destruction of his home. He had to do something. But as he took a step forward, a hand landed firmly on his shoulder, pulling him back. "Sam, wait." It was Marcus, his voice urgent. "This is too much. We need a plan. You can't go in there without backup." "I'm not waiting anymore, Marcus," Sam said, his voice firm. "These people need to see that we're not scared. We have to fight for Rockford. This town belongs to the people, not these thugs." Marcus looked torn, his eyes flicking to the bikers who were now surrounding the diner, their laughter echoing through the streets. "Sam, I get it. But we can't take them on alone. Let me get reinforcements. Let us handle this." "I can't wait for reinforcements," Sam said, shaking his head. "They'll destroy everything before help even arrives." But as Sam took another step, something caught his eye. He saw Jake standing by the diner's entrance, looking at him with a smug, knowing grin. Behind him, the rest of the bikers were getting bolder, knocking over more things, breaking windows with reckless abandon. It was clear now that this wasn't just about intimidation. They wanted to break the town's spirit. They wanted to break him. Jake's voice carried over the noise. "What's the matter, Mayor? You gonna try and stop us? Go ahead. I dare you." Sam's blood boiled. He felt like he was being dragged into a fight he hadn't signed up for. But he couldn't back down now. He couldn't show fear. Not when people were depending on him. He took a deep breath and squared his shoulders. "We're not backing down," Sam said, his voice steady. "This town is not yours to destroy." The tension between them was palpable, and for a brief moment, Sam thought Jake might actually make a move. But then Jake's expression shifted. The smirk faded as he raised his hand to stop his gang from advancing further. His eyes narrowed as he regarded Sam, almost as if he were testing him. "We'll see about that, Mayor," Jake said coldly, then motioned for his gang to pull back just a little. The bikers didn't stop causing trouble, but they slowed their attack, waiting for Sam's next move. It was a twisted game, and Sam knew Jake was enjoying every second of it. Marcus stepped forward, clearly relieved that the bikers had given them a brief reprieve. "Sam, listen to me. We can't do this alone. We need backup. We need to hold off until we can regroup. Sam's jaw tightened. I know you're right, but I can't just stand here and watch while they destroy everything. We'll find a way to stop them together. The situation was more complicated than Sam had imagined. These bikers weren't just a loose group of troublemakers. They were organized, ruthless, and they were in Rockford for a reason. Sam had assumed that if he showed strength, they would back down. But that wasn't the case. They were pushing back harder than ever. As the minutes dragged on, the crowd around them grew. People who had been in the diner were now standing in the streets, watching the bikers with a mix of fear and defiance. Sam could see it in their eyes. They weren't going to back down either. This was their town, and it wasn't going to be taken without a fight. The sound of sirens could be heard in the distance, and Sam's heart skipped a beat. Reinforcements were finally on the way, but Sam knew that the bikers wouldn't wait for the police to arrive. The longer they stood in the street, the more brazen they became. Before Sam could act, one of the bikers, a man with tattoos running down his arms, rushed forward, his fists raised. Sam barely had time to react as the man swung at him, landing a solid punch to his jaw. Sam stumbled back, more surprised than hurt. He hadn't expected the bikers to go this far. Is that all you've got, Mayor? The biker taunted. Sam's eyes blazed with fury. He wiped the blood from his lip and stood tall. That's just the beginning. He charged forward, but before he could reach the biker, a group of officers arrived, their vehicles screeching to a halt in front of him. They quickly jumped out, forming a protective line between Sam and the bikers. The police had arrived just in time to prevent things from escalating further. Sam, get back, Marcus shouted, grabbing him by the arm and pulling him to the side. Let the police handle this. But Sam was having none of it. He didn't want to be protected. He wanted to protect Rockford. The police immediately began to direct the bikers away from the diner, issuing stern warnings and trying to corral them into a position where they could de-escalate the situation. The bikers didn't make it easy. Some of them revved their engines loudly, while others yelled obscenities and cursed the officers. The tension in the air was thick. Sam watched helplessly as the bikers continued to taunt the police, knowing this was far from over. The town was in chaos, and no one seemed to have the answers. And then, as if to prove how little control anyone had, one of the bikers pulled out a flare gun from his belt, pointing it at the sky. A second later, a flare shot up into the air, sending a brilliant streak of light across the darkened sky. The explosion of light felt like a signal, a warning of something far worse to come. As Sam's eyes followed the flare, his heart sank. This wasn't just about intimidation anymore. This was about sending a message. The bikers weren't just here to destroy Rockford. They were here to burn it all down piece by piece, and they wouldn't stop until they had done just that. In the distance, Sam could hear the unmistakable sound of more motorcycles approaching. This wasn't over. The fight for Rockford was just beginning. Sam stood frozen, a knot tightening in his chest as he realized the full extent of what he was facing. The bikers weren't just a local gang. They were part of something much bigger, and they weren't going to stop until they had taken everything from him. And Sam had no idea how to stop them. The fight for Rockford was on, and it wasn't just about one man anymore. It was about the entire town and its survival. The flare shot up into the night sky, casting an eerie glow over Rockford. Sam's pulse raced as he watched the bright streak of light arc across the heavens. It was like a signal, a flare for reinforcements, or a warning of something far worse to come. It felt as though the entire town was holding its breath, waiting for the next move. The bikers, emboldened by the flare, revved their engines louder, their mocking laughter and taunts filling the air. Sam could hear the sounds of more motorcycles approaching from the outskirts of town. The flare wasn't just an act of rebellion. It was a signal that the bikers weren't working alone. There were more of them, and they were coming. The police officers, still struggling to control the chaos, moved into position, but it was clear that they were outmatched. The bikers weren't just riding through Rockford anymore. They were setting up camp. It was becoming a full-blown invasion. Sam, we need to get you out of here, Marcus urged, grabbing his arm. The situation's escalating. The bikers are getting more aggressive. We can't let you get caught in the middle of it. Sam looked around at the crowd of people who had gathered, their eyes wide with fear, and his heart sank. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the entire town. The bikers had already done enough damage. The town hall was gone, the diner was being destroyed, and now they were trying to force their will on the people of Rockford. Sam's anger burned hotter than ever. "I'm not going anywhere, Marcus," Sam said, his voice hard. "I'm not running. This is my town, and I'm not going to let them take it without a fight." Marcus shook his head in frustration. "Sam, you're the mayor. You can't help anyone if you're in danger. We need to regroup, make a plan." "I don't have time for that." Sam snapped, his fists clenching. "The bikers are already making their move. They're trying to tear this town apart, and I'm not going to let them. Not without a fight." Before Marcus could argue further, the sound of approaching motorcycles grew louder, and Sam turned toward the street. The bikers weren't just riding into town, they were riding in formation like soldiers ready for battle. Sam's stomach dropped. He could see the headlights approaching, dozens of them, growing closer with each passing second. The air grew thick with the tension of impending violence. Sam's thoughts raced, but his body was already moving. He had to act, and he had to act fast. "Call for reinforcements, Marcus," Sam ordered, his voice rising above the roar of engines. "We need backup now." "I'm on it," Marcus said, pulling out his phone. He started dialing, but Sam could already hear the sirens from the local police cars and the distant rumble of more motorcycles. They were too late. The bikers had already taken control. As the first of the bikers arrived, they scattered across Main Street, surrounding the police officers who were trying to contain the chaos. They revved their engines aggressively, their faces hidden behind helmets and bandanas. The air was thick with smoke from their bikes, and the streetlights flickered, casting an ominous glow over everything. Sam stood at the edge of the street, his heart pounding, watching the bikers gather. Jake was at the front, a smug grin on his face. He spotted Sam immediately, his eyes locking onto the mayor with cold intent. The gang leader raised his hand, signaling the others to stop. "Looks like we've got a real problem here," Jake said, his voice cutting through the noise. "The mayor thinks he can just stand in our way." Sam's pulse quickened as he stepped forward, facing Jake directly. "You've done enough damage, Jake. This isn't your town. You're not welcome here." Jake's grin widened. "You don't get it, do you, Sam? This town isn't yours to save. You think you can just rebuild after everything we've done? After everything we've taken?" The bikers around them started to move, circling Sam and the police officers like wolves preparing to strike. Sam's mind raced. They were surrounded. There were too many of them, and the situation was growing worse by the second. He had no choice but to keep up the appearance of control, even if every instinct in him told him to run. "We're not backing down," Sam said firmly, trying to project confidence. "You won't win this, Jake." Jake chuckled darkly, shaking his head. "You really think you're in control? You're nothing. And neither is this town." He waved his hand, and suddenly the bikers revved their engines louder, drowning out Sam's words. Before Sam could respond, one of the bikers moved toward the nearby gas station, pouring something from a plastic container onto the ground. Sam's stomach dropped as he realized what was happening. "No," he shouted, rushing toward the biker. But it was too late. The biker tossed a lit match onto the ground, setting fire to the gas-soaked pavement in a flash of flames. The fire spread quickly, catching the nearby trees and buildings in its path. The sound of crackling flames mixed with the roar of the bikers' engines. Chaos erupted. The crowd that had gathered to watch scattered in all directions as smoke filled the air. The police officers tried to corral the bikers, but they were quickly overwhelmed. The bikers didn't seem to care about anything except destruction. They were more than just a gang. They were a force of nature, bent on tearing down everything in their path. "Sam, we have to get out of here," Marcus shouted, pulling at his arm. Sam barely registered the urgency in his voice as his eyes remained fixed on the growing inferno. But Sam didn't move. He couldn't leave. Not now. With his fists clenched, he stepped forward, yelling at the officers to try and contain the fire. But it was clear that the bikers had anticipated this. They were moving fast, spreading out across the town. Some had already started setting fires in other areas, while others continued to smash windows, steal from stores, and harass anyone who got too close. The small town of Rockford, a place Sam had worked his entire life to protect, was crumbling before his eyes. And then, as if the situation wasn't dire enough, Sam's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, heart hammering in his chest, and saw a message from the local news station. "Mayor, we've just received confirmation that several biker gangs are headed your way. This is a coordinated attack. We've received reports of similar violence across the state. Stay safe. We're sending our reporters to cover the situation." Sam's throat went dry as he processed the message. This wasn't just about Rockford anymore. It was part of something bigger. A network of biker gangs working together to spread fear and chaos across the state. "This is bad," Sam muttered, looking around at the devastation. The fire continued to spread, and the police were losing ground. The bikers weren't just out for control, they were out for complete domination. "We need to act fast," Sam said, turning to Marcus. "Get in touch with the governor. Get us state help. We can't handle this on our own." Marcus nodded, his face grim. "I'm already working on it. But it's going to take time. We might not have much of a chance if we don't get reinforcements soon." As Sam looked back at the street, the realization hit him like a punch to the gut. The bikers weren't just after him anymore. They were coming for Rockford, for the people, for everything Sam had spent his life trying to protect. They were going to burn it all down piece by piece until nothing was left. And Sam had no idea how to stop them. The air was thick with smoke, and the crackling of the flames filled the night as Rockford's streets burned. Sam's heart hammered in his chest. The situation was spiraling out of control. Every direction he turned, there was another fire, another gang member causing mayhem. The bikers were everywhere. He glanced at Marcus, who was already on his phone, trying to coordinate with the state police. But the message was clear. Reinforcements wouldn't be here in time to stop the destruction. Sam could feel the weight of the town's future pressing down on him. If he didn't act soon, Rockford would be gone. "Sam, we need to evacuate," Marcus said, his voice shaky. "The fires are spreading. It's not safe for anyone to stay here." "I'm not leaving," Sam replied firmly, shaking his head. "I won't leave the people of Rockford to fend for themselves. We need to stand our ground." Marcus hesitated, clearly torn between his duty to protect Sam and his concern for the safety of the town. "You can't protect everyone by yourself, Sam. We need to gather the citizens, get them out, and find a safe place to regroup. This is bigger than you and me." Sam's eyes flicked back to the chaos unfolding around them. He knew Marcus was right, but leaving the town to burn without fighting back felt like defeat. The sight of the flames creeping closer to the heart of the town made him realize just how much was at stake. Rockford was more than just a place to him. It was home. And if he didn't protect it, then no one would. "Okay," Sam said after a long pause. "We'll get the people to safety, but we're not giving up. Not yet." He turned toward the crowd that had begun to gather near the town's edge, some looking confused and frightened, others huddling together, hoping for answers. Sam's voice rang out, loud and clear, cutting through the chaos. "Listen up, everyone. We're going to move quickly. Head toward the community center on Pine Street. We'll have medical personnel there, and we'll keep you safe. Don't stop. Don't look back. And for God's sake, stay together." People started to move, some looking uncertain, others rushing to gather their families. Sam watched them go, his heart heavy with a sense of helplessness. The bikers weren't just attacking businesses and homes. They were attacking the very soul of Rockford. They were trying to break the people, to make them run. But Sam wasn't going to let that happen. Not without a fight. The distant roar of motorcycles told Sam the bikers were closing in. There was no time to waste. He turned to Marcus, his face grim. "We need to find out how many of them there are. We can't defend this town without knowing what we're up against." Marcus nodded and immediately pulled out his phone again. "I'll try to get a sense of their numbers. Maybe we can find a weak spot. But Sam, we need more than just numbers. We need to organize a defense. We can't let them overrun us." "We will," Sam said, his voice hard. "But first, we make sure the people are safe. Then we regroup and take back what's ours." By the time they reached the community center, most of the townspeople had already gathered. The once bustling center, which had been a hub for local events and gatherings, now served as a makeshift shelter. There were a few police officers there, trying to keep things calm, but the place was far from secure. Everyone was on edge, looking over their shoulders as the fires raged in the distance. Sam stepped into the center, scanning the room. There were elderly people, young children, and families huddled together, all of them terrified. He couldn't help but feel a sense of guilt. He was the mayor, the one who was supposed to protect them. And right now he felt powerless. "Sam," a voice called from the back of the room. It was Laura, the town councilwoman, her face pale but determined. "We've got a problem. There are reports coming in that the bikers are blocking all the roads out of town. No one can leave, and the fire's spreading fast." Sam clenched his jaw. They were trapped. The bikers were cutting off escape routes, making sure that everyone in Rockford was either stuck or forced to face them head-on. Sam could feel the dread rising in his chest. This was more than just an attack on the town. It was an attempt to break the people, to destroy the very idea of Rockford itself. "We need to get those people out of here," Sam said urgently. "If we can't fight them head-on, we'll find another way. Do we have any way to communicate with the outside world?" Laura nodded. "We've got a couple of radios from the local fire department, but it's not much. The cell towers are starting to go down." Sam's heart sank. The more he thought about it, the clearer it became the bikers weren't just after power. They were trying to send a message, and they had all the pieces in place to do it. Rockford was on the brink of collapse. He paced back and forth, his mind racing. If they couldn't escape and they couldn't fight their way out, what were their options? He needed a plan fast. Just then, the door to the community center burst open, and a young officer came rushing in, looking out of breath. "Mayor, we've got a situation," he said, his face flushed with panic. "The bikers, there's a whole group of them, are setting up barricades on the north end of town. They're making it impossible for anyone to leave. And we just got word there's a fire spreading up toward the school." Sam's stomach twisted. The school. His mind flashed to his own children, safe for now, but how long would that last? How long before the bikers came for them too? "We need to get to the school," Sam said immediately, turning to Marcus and Laura. "If we can't evacuate everyone, at least we can save the kids." Without hesitation, they made their way back toward the town center. As they walked, Sam's thoughts raced. They couldn't just keep reacting to the bikers' moves. They needed to strike back. They needed to take control of the narrative. "We'll make a stand at the school," Sam said, his voice steely. "It's time to show them we won't back down." They reached the school quickly, the glow of flames already visible on the horizon. The building was still intact, but smoke was rising from the nearby woods. The fire was dangerously close. Inside, the staff had already begun moving the children to the back, away from the danger. Teachers, parents, and volunteers were working together to keep the students calm. But Sam could feel the tension in the air. Every minute they spent here was another minute closer to the bikers' arrival. They had to move fast. "We need to fortify the building," Sam said to the teachers and volunteers. "Board up the windows, lock the doors. We're not leaving until we have a way out." One of the teachers, a woman named Jessica, looked at Sam with wide eyes. "Mayor, we've tried calling for help, but the lines are down. We can't hold out forever. What if the bikers break through?" "We'll fight them off," Sam said, determination setting in. "They'll have to go through us to get to these kids." Just as Sam finished speaking, the loud crash echoed through the hall. The doors to the front of the school were violently shoved open. Sam's heart skipped a beat as he saw the first of the bikers step inside, his boots echoing on the wooden floor. Jake's voice rang out, cold and taunting. Well, looks like the mayor's finally decided to play defense." Sam's fists clenched. He wasn't about to let Jake or anyone else take this town from him. The bikers were inside. And this time, they weren't backing down. Sam took a deep breath, facing the group of bikers who had now surrounded the school. They weren't here to negotiate. They weren't here to talk. They were here to take everything. But Sam wasn't going to let them. Not without a fight. The doors of the school slammed open, and the first biker, a tall man with a leather jacket emblazoned with the word "Rogue" across the back, stormed inside. Behind him, a group of men and women in dark helmets and torn clothing followed, their engines roaring as they revved outside the building. Sam's mind raced, but his body acted before he could second-guess himself. He moved to stand in front of the children, positioning himself as a shield between them and the chaos unfolding just outside the walls. "Stay back," Sam shouted, his voice rough but firm, trying to steady his breath as the adrenaline surged through him. "We're not going down without a fight." The bikers chuckled, their faces hidden behind their helmets. It was as though they found the idea of resistance amusing. The tall biker, the one who seemed to be the leader, stepped forward, his boots thudding heavily against the floor with each step. "Not much of a fight, though, is it, Mayor?" The man sneered. His voice was gravelly, as if he'd spent years shouting over the roar of engines. "What are you going to do? Fight me with a baseball bat?" "We'll do what we have to," Sam said, his voice unwavering, even as his heart raced. Behind him, the teachers and volunteers were scrambling to barricade the windows and doors, trying to fortify their position. The kids huddled against the walls, eyes wide with fear, clutching one another. Sam could see the terror in their faces, and it pushed him to stay calm. They couldn't lose hope now, not when they were so close to making it out alive. The biker leader looked over at his shoulder, signaling to his crew. One of the women in the group, a short-haired biker with tattoos curling up her arms, stepped forward, holding up a flare gun. She fired it into the air with a sharp pop, sending a streak of orange light through the darkened sky. Sam's eyes followed the flare, knowing it was a signal. It wasn't just about Rockford anymore. The bikers were calling in reinforcements. "Looks like you've got a big fire going on out there, Mayor," the leader said, his tone mocking. "But I've got news for you. This is just the beginning. By the time we're done here, there won't be a single building left standing." Sam's blood boiled. He clenched his fists, willing himself to think clearly. "If you want this town, you'll have to take it from us, and we're not just going to hand it over." The biker grinned beneath his helmet. "We've been taking towns like this for months, Sam. You think your little band of townsfolk is going to stop us?" Sam didn't answer immediately. He couldn't afford to make a rash move, especially not with so many lives at stake. Instead, he glanced over at his shoulder at the teachers, who were doing their best to calm the kids. One of them, Jessica, caught his eye and gave him a small nod, showing she was doing everything she could to keep the children safe. "I need a plan," Sam whispered to Marcus, who had just rejoined him at the front of the room. "We can't just stand here waiting for them to break through." Marcus looked grim. "We don't have much time. We've got maybe 15-20 minutes before the reinforcements arrive, and that's assuming they even make it here." Sam knew that wasn't enough time. The bikers wouldn't wait for the cavalry. They were going to press their attack, pushing forward no matter what. "We need to make them think we're stronger than we are," Sam said, a sudden idea forming in his mind. "We've got to create a distraction, something that makes them second-guess their plan." Marcus frowned. "How do you propose we do that? We're outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded." "I don't know yet," Sam said, his eyes scanning the room. He saw a few tools and supplies scattered across the classrooms, things that might be useful in a pinch. "But we can't just sit here and wait for them to come in. We'll use whatever we've got." "All right, Sam, what's the play?" "We're going to make them think this place is a trap." Sam quickly began pulling people together, forming a plan on the fly. He knew it wouldn't be perfect, but it was all they had. He sent Marcus to help barricade the back entrance while he and a few volunteers set up in the front. They couldn't afford to let the bikers get inside without making them work for it. Outside, the bikers were preparing for their assault. More motorcycles were arriving, their engines roaring as they zoomed through the streets. The fire continued to spread in the distance, casting an ominous glow over the town. It seemed like the entire world had descended on Rockford, and Sam had no idea how long they could hold out. The leader of the bikers, the one Sam had been face-to-face with, gave a signal, and the bikers began to move toward the school's front doors. "Let's get this over with," he said coldly, leading the charge. Sam's heart pounded as he watched them approach, but he stood firm, not moving an inch. His mind raced. This is it. He had no backup, no reinforcements yet, and no way of knowing if they would make it out alive, but he refused to back down. "Get ready," Sam whispered to the others. The first biker reached the school doors, slamming his shoulder into the wooden frame. But just as he pushed through, he stumbled back with a shout. A cloud of thick smoke burst into the air, an old fire extinguisher rigged to go off. The volunteers inside had worked quickly, and now the front hallway was filled with a dense, choking fog. Confusion spread through the bikers like wildfire. They stopped in their tracks, their visibility reduced to nothing. Sam could hear them shouting at one another, trying to make sense of what was happening. In the midst of the chaos, Sam rushed forward, throwing open the door to the front yard. The smoke swirled outside, and the bikers, momentarily disoriented, were hesitant to push forward. "Now!" Sam shouted. The plan was simple. Buy time. He had rigged the hallway with smoke bombs, hoping to throw off the bikers and give the children more time to escape. The people of Rockford didn't have much, but they had the spirit to fight. Marcus, who had positioned himself at the back of the building, was already leading a group of families out through the back door, one at a time. The bikers were distracted. They didn't expect anyone to be leaving the school, at least not until the whole place was under siege. Sam knew it wouldn't last long. The bikers would regroup, figure it out, and return with a vengeance. But in this moment, they had the upper hand. Then, just as Sam turned to follow Marcus and the others, a voice rang out from behind him. Well, Sam, you think a little smoke's going to stop us?" Jake. He was standing in the doorway, flanked by several of his gang members, their eyes glowing in the dim light. Sam's blood ran cold. The bikers had regrouped faster than he had expected. "Did you really think you could just run away from this?" Jake continued, his voice full of venom. "This is our town now, Sam. It was always going to be ours." The tension in the air was unbearable. Sam's mind raced, but his hands remained steady. "You've made a mistake, Jake," Sam said, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. "You think you can break us, but you can't. This town is stronger than you'll ever be. We're not going down without a fight." Jake sneered, his hands tightening around his handlebars. "Fine. You want to fight. You got it." Before Sam could react, the sound of sirens pierced the air. It was the first real sign of hope Sam had heard all night. The state police had finally arrived. But as the first police cars skidded to a stop outside, Sam knew they weren't out of danger yet. The bikers weren't going to back down just because the cops had arrived. They were here for a fight, and they weren't leaving until they got what they came for. The final showdown had begun, and this time Sam wasn't going to let them take another step forward. The sound of sirens was like music to Sam's ears, but it was quickly overshadowed by the roar of motorcycle engines and the tense, uncertain atmosphere that had settled over the schoolyard. The bikers, still regrouping in the smoke-filled school, looked as though they weren't going to back down. Jake, standing just inside the doorway, sneered at Sam. "Cops aren't going to save you, Sam," Jake spat, his voice dripping with contempt. "This town's ours now. You should have known better than to fight back." Sam's fists clenched, but he didn't move. He could feel the tension in the air thickening with every passing second. Behind him, the children and townspeople were still rushing to escape out the back, as Marcus had ordered. The smoke bombs had done their job, But it wouldn't be long before the bikers regrouped and found a way to break through. Then, just as Sam took a step forward to confront Jake, the first wave of police cars screeched to a halt outside the school. 4 officers jumped out, their hands on their guns, scanning the area. Sam's heart raced. There was a sense of hope now. But he knew it would take more than a few officers to break the bikers' resolve. They were outnumbered, and Rockford had never seen a fight like this before. "Get back, Sam," one of the officers shouted, his voice steady but urgent. "We're gonna need backup. We can't do this alone." Sam didn't want to pull back. He wasn't leaving the fight now, especially not when so many innocent lives were at stake. But he knew the police were right. There was no way they could handle the bikers head-on without more help. They needed to buy time. "Do you have anyone else coming?" Sam shouted back, not taking his eyes off Jake. The officer gave a curt nod. "More units are on the way. Just hang tight and try to keep them busy." Sam turned to Marcus, who had just emerged from the back door with several families. The police had bought them precious time, but the bikers weren't going to just wait around for reinforcements. Sam quickly made a decision. "Marcus, take them to the church on Oak Street. It's safer there. Tell everyone to stay quiet, and don't stop moving." Marcus gave a sharp nod, quickly gathering the last of the townspeople and leading them away, pushing them toward the safest part of town. Sam's eyes followed them until they disappeared into the smoke. "Stay strong," Sam murmured under his breath, turning his attention back to the bikers. Jake smirked, clearly pleased with the chaos he had caused. "It's over, Sam. You should have known better than to try to defend this place." Sam's eyes narrowed. This is far from over. He turned back to the police officers, his mind working fast. They didn't have much time. The bikers weren't just after the town anymore. They were after something more. They wanted to break Rockford, tear it down piece by piece, until nothing was left but dust. And Sam couldn't let that happen. "We need to move fast," Sam said to the officers. "The bikers aren't going to wait for backup. They're going to attack as soon as they feel the pressure's off." The officers nodded, glancing nervously at the smoke rising in the distance. More motorcycles could be heard revving up, signaling that the bikers were preparing to make their next move. "Get ready," one officer said. "We'll cover the front. Stay in the back and make sure the people are safe." Just as the officers began positioning themselves, Sam saw movement in the distance. A line of bikers, led by Jake, were making their way toward the front doors of the school, weapons visible in their hands. They had no intention of waiting for the cops to take control. They were charging in, determined to finish what they started. "Get ready," Sam shouted to the police. "They're coming." The bikers pushed forward, their boots slamming against the ground, their weapons drawn. Sam's heart beat like a drum as he prepared for the worst. He knew this was it. This was the moment when everything would change. He couldn't back down now. Without warning, the first biker lunged at the officers, swinging a crowbar at one of the cops. The officer blocked the strike with his baton, but the biker's strength was overwhelming. Another officer fired a warning shot into the air, trying to send a message, but the bikers were undeterred. They surged forward like a tidal wave, eager to bring the town to its knees. Sam didn't wait for them to come to him. He dashed forward, pushing through the officers to stand in front of Jake. "Enough!" he shouted, voice steady but forceful. "This ends now, Jake." The biker leader grinned, clearly amused by Sam's courage. "You really think you can stop us?" he sneered. "You think a couple of cops are gonna scare us off?" "I don't think you understand," Sam said, locking eyes with Jake. "This isn't just a fight for this town. This is a fight for the people here, the people who've called Rockford home for generations, and we're not going to let you destroy it." Jake's smile faltered for a moment. For a brief second, Sam saw doubt in his eyes, but it quickly vanished. With a swift motion, Jake raised his weapon, a heavy steel chain, and swung it at Sam, aiming for his head. Sam barely managed to duck in time, the chain swooshing past him. But he wasn't alone. A police officer lunged forward, tackling Jake to the ground. The two struggled in the dirt, But Jake's gang members quickly came to his aid. Sam's heart raced as he looked around, trying to assess the situation. It was chaos. The bikers were overpowering the police, and the officers seemed to be fighting a losing battle. Just as Sam turned to look for a way to regroup, a loud crash echoed from the far side of the school. A truck had barreled through the fence, its engine roaring as it skidded to a stop in the middle of the yard. "Move! Get out of the way!" a voice shouted from the truck's cab. Sam turned, his heart leaping. A familiar face emerged from the driver's seat. It was Officer Harris, one of the officers who had been part of the town's reserve force. Behind him, a convoy of 4 more trucks appeared, each one packed with reinforcements, local officers, National Guard, and a few citizens from nearby towns. "They're here," Sam breathed, a wave of relief washing over him. The reinforcements had finally arrived. The bikers, now caught off guard by the sudden onslaught, hesitated. Jake stood up from the ground, fury in his eyes as he saw the new forces closing in. He wasn't ready to back down, not when he was so close to taking control of Rockford. But Sam knew this was their moment. He stepped forward, calling out to the arriving troops, "We hold the line here. Don't let them move an inch. Protect the people." With the reinforcements in place, the bikers now faced a choice: keep fighting and risk getting overwhelmed, or retreat before the situation turned even worse. Jake's voice rang out over the battlefield, filled with rage. "This isn't over, Sam. You hear me? This town will fall. It always does." But Sam didn't flinch. He stood tall, his gaze unwavering. "Not today, Jake. Not today." As the police and the National Guard began to push the bikers back, Sam felt a surge of hope. This was far from over, but it was a victory. A small one, but one that could turn the tide for Rockford. The battle had only just begun, but Sam knew something important had changed. The town had fought back, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Sam could finally see a way out of the darkness. The bikers were retreating, but Sam couldn't afford to get comfortable just yet. He knew they would be back, more aggressive, more determined. But Rockford had something now that it hadn't had before: the strength to fight back. And that was something worth holding on to. The sound of retreating engines echoed through the streets as the last of the bikers sped off into the distance. The smoke began to dissipate, the acrid smell of burnt rubber and gasoline hanging in the air like a bad memory. The tension in the schoolyard was palpable as the reinforcements, police officers, National Guard, and local volunteers, took control of the area. Sam stood motionless in the middle of the yard, his heart still pounding from the chaos. He could see the wreckage of the battle, broken windows, scorched earth, and the remnants of bikes scattered across the field. But there was a strange feeling of quiet victory in the air. They had fought back. The town had fought back. "Sam," came a voice from behind him. It was Officer Harris, still catching his breath from the adrenaline of the battle. "We've got them on the run. The last of their group is scattering into the hills, but I'm not sure how long that'll last." Sam turned to face him. His eyes were tired, but there was a fire in them that hadn't been there before. "We've got to make sure they don't come back. We can't let them regroup and plan another attack." Officer Harris nodded grimly. "We'll need more manpower. But for now, we need to get the town back on its feet. People are shaken up, Sam. It's going to take time." Sam took a deep breath. He knew that the town had won this battle, but the war was far from over. Jake and his crew wouldn't stop until they had claimed what they wanted, and Sam wasn't about to let that happen. But today, they had made a statement. Rockford was not a town that would be easily taken. As Harris turned to head toward the group of officers, Sam's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a truck pulling up. He looked up to see Marcus driving it, a few more townspeople sitting in the bed. The truck stopped in front of him, and Marcus jumped out, his face grim but relieved. "We've got everyone to safety, Sam," Marcus said, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. "The church is packed and the families are staying put. It's not much, but it's something." Sam's face softened with gratitude. "Good work. You did what needed to be done." "Just doing my part," Marcus said, but his tone hinted at the exhaustion he was feeling. Sam could tell that the weight of the responsibility was wearing on him, just as it was wearing on everyone. The whole town had been through a lot in the last few hours, and the last thing anyone wanted was to think about the future. "How are the kids?" Sam asked, his eyes flicking to the truck bed, where a few families had huddled together. The children looked tired and scared, but they were safe for now. "They're shaken up," Marcus replied. "But they're okay. The teachers are doing their best to keep them calm. It's going to be a long road ahead, Sam." Sam nodded, the reality of what lay ahead settling heavily in his chest. "We'll get through it, one day at a time." Marcus paused before speaking again. I don't think it's over yet. You heard Jake back there. He's not going to give up that easily." Sam felt a cold chill run down his spine. He had heard the venom in Jake's words, and he knew the biker leader would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. This battle may have been won, but the war for Rockford was far from over. "I know," Sam said, looking out toward the horizon, where the last of the bikers were vanishing into the distance. "But we're not backing down." As the sun began to set over Rockford, the town settled into an uneasy peace. The fires had been put out, the smoke cleared, and the wounded were tended to. Sam stood at the front of the school, watching the last few police officers and National Guard soldiers secure the area. There was still a lot to be done, but for the first time in hours he felt a flicker of hope. But even as the day ended, Sam knew the danger was far from over. Jake and his crew would be back. They would regroup, plan, and try again. And next time they wouldn't be caught off guard. "Sam," Officer Harris called from behind him. "We need to talk. There's something you need to see." Sam turned and followed Harris toward a small group of officers gathered around a table near the school's main entrance. A map of the area was spread out before them, and several pieces of paper and documents were scattered across the surface. Harris motioned for Sam to sit. "What is it?" Sam asked, his mind still clouded with the aftermath of the fight. One of the officers, a woman named Detective Jacobs, spoke up. "We found something during the cleanup. It's not good." Sam's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Jacobs handed him a piece of paper. It was a map of Rockford, but this map was different. There were red circles drawn around various locations that seemed random at first glance, but Sam's gut told him otherwise. "These are the biker hideouts," Jacobs explained. "We've been monitoring them for a while now. They've been moving in and out of these locations for weeks, probably longer. And based on what we found, they've been coordinating their efforts with a much larger group." Sam's stomach dropped. The realization hit him hard. "So they've been planning this for months?" "Possibly even longer," Harris replied. "This wasn't just about Rockford. This was about something bigger, some kind of organized operation. And now they know we're onto them." The thought of a much larger network behind Jake and his gang made Sam's blood run cold. What were they after? Why Rockford? "Do we have any idea who's behind this?" Sam asked, his mind racing. "We're still trying to piece it together," Jacobs said. "But one thing is clear. Whoever's pulling the strings is powerful, and they want control." Sam leaned back in his chair, the weight of the situation settling over him. He had known that this fight was far from over, but now it felt even more urgent. Jake's gang was only the tip of the iceberg. Whoever was behind them had bigger plans, and Rockford was just one piece of the puzzle. "We need to make a move," Sam said, standing up. His resolve was solid. The people of Rockford had already proven they weren't going to let anyone walk over them. Now it was time to get ahead of the bikers, and whoever else was involved in this conspiracy. "Get the townsfolk ready," he continued, turning to Marcus, who had joined him at the table. "We're going to need everyone we can get. We're not just defending our homes anymore. We're going to make sure they know we won't let them take our town without a fight." The battle wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. Sam knew the coming days would test every ounce of his strength, but he also knew that Rockford had something that the bikers and their hidden masters didn't: heart. And Sam wasn't about to let that heart be crushed without a fight. As the night descended over Rockford, the town stood still, waiting. The calm before the storm. The next chapter of this battle was about to begin, and Sam knew one thing for certain. It wasn't just about the bikers anymore. This was about something much bigger. Something that could change everything. And Rockford would stand together, no matter what. The fight for Rockford was far from over.